What's up, everyone? Welcome back to my World Open recap series. This is day 4. I'm going to be going over round 6 and 7. Man, not going to lie, I'm a bit dejected right now after my game that finished a couple hours ago, and we'll get to why. But first, we got round 6. This is the round from this morning, and I got paired up against a kid, pretty young. I don't know, maybe like 12 or 13 or so, and I decided to switch things up. I played c4 this game, the English. And he decided to go for the symmetrical, but basically the position transposed into the Moroxy bind, something you would see against the accelerated dragon. And I've played this before plenty of times, either through e4 or c4 move orders. He was not as familiar with it based on his time usage and the fact that I'm pretty sure he plays e5 against e4, so he's not a Sicilian player. So basically, I steered him into territory that is slightly unfamiliar to him in the hopes that, I can get an edge. And, this position is very standard, been played like thousands of times before, considered a little bit better for white. Here I played queen d2. And now there was a move here for black that is just so tempting to play and he couldn't resist, and that's the move knight g4. Because it hits my bishop, and basically, I'm going to be losing one of my bishops. But the thing is, when I took and played f3, I actually was perfectly fine with giving up my light square bishop because now I just have all my pawns on light squares, and that bishop was not actually that good. It wasn't doing much. And okay, he now has the bishop pair, but I have more space and I have a good structure. And I knew that I have the edge here, but how to actually play it? I played the move b3 just to kind of sure things up, and he played queen a5, pinning my knight, so I had defended my queen. And here I decided to play the move knight d5. Now in hindsight, maybe it was a bit premature, but I felt like this would be a good time to trade queens, following the old saying, when you play kid, you play endgame, they lose. But jokes aside, I thought that, if we trade queens, as happened in the game, I get a pretty favorable situation because I have the knights in the center. I'm going to try to probe his position for holes. And we'll see how it goes. So he played rook c8 here, just to obviously prevent knight c7 with the fork that I was threatening here. In this position, I needed to get my rook off of the a1 square because it's on this annoying diagonal. Basically, the knight on d4 is pinned, right? So I need to move the rook somewhere. And I thought for a while here and decided to put it on c1, which was correct, or at least not wrong, but not for the reason that I had in mind. Maybe I should have just played rook d1 and avoided trouble, because rook c1, he now played e6, and here is where I actually made a mistake. So what I was anticipating is that I go back with the knight, and he plays d5. I was thinking, what if he makes this pawn break? He's sacrificing a pawn, but then he takes here. I take him, he takes here intermezzo, and then takes my rook. And I was calculating this position in my head. We get to this point. He has the bishop pair. My structure is kind of broken, but then I saw that at the end I can at least snag this pawn. Or if I want to be fancy, I can give this check. Funny move. He actually cannot take the knight. He has to play king f8, and then boom, boom, and then I take this pawn. Because if you were to take the knight, he's actually lost. Because I have check, and I'm going to take his bishop next move and mate, and he has no way to stop it. So I was calculating this line in my head, and I was okay, if he goes for it, I should be fine. But what I missed was that he simply takes, and I thought, okay, he's going to trade the bishops, and then he played bishop h6. And I realized that, I just got skewered. I'm losing the exchange now, and I completely missed this idea. What I really should have done was actually taken this knight first, and then no matter how he takes, pawn, bishop, whatever, just bring the knight back. f4 or c3, because he can't, he doesn't have the skewer now because he can't distract my bishop. And I'm just slightly better here. This pawn is weak. So out of nowhere, I just find myself down the exchange. He takes. But then here, I guess he just got a little bit too excited. this kid, to be honest, he fit the stereotype of how kids play, like very good tactically. He was seeing these little tricks, but he was playing too fast at times and not doing enough to kind of control the position. At this point, all he needed to do was defend this pawn, either play like b6 or maybe just a6, and he's just better. I mean, he's up the exchange, and like, yeah, my bishop is pretty nice, but realistically, black should be the one pushing for a win. Instead, he played the move b5, which I just did not understand. Like, I don't know if he was trying to bait me to take with pawn, so that he would then play this move and I'm losing the knight, right? Because the bishop has to move, and then he would take. Like, maybe he thought that because I blundered one tactic, I'm going to blunder another. But no, I took with the knight, and now he just gifted me basically a 3-on-1 majority over here. Like, I'm going to make a pass pawn at some point, and he better be ready to defend against it. Now he played rook c7, obviously having to defend the pawn. In this moment, there was a move that like was really tempting, and that was bishop f6, because it kind of like fixes him in place. He can't like push the pawn to move his king. He can't play rook here, and this pawn is now under attack. Like, he has to play like rook d7. But I just thought that, I play a4, he plays e5, and eventually he's going to go rook e6 and kick me back. So I didn't play that move. I just played a4 because I'm thinking I got to make a pass pawn here ASAP. But then he played f5. And I was starting to regret not putting the bishop here to kind of slow him down. And now this f5 move is a little bit clever. Like I said, he's good tactically. He's setting a trap. If I play the move like a5, for example, just trying to make moves here, he would play e5. My bishop has to move back, and I would have to put it on b2, because if I go to e3, he plays f4, and then he goes check, and suddenly I can't stop the check without losing a piece. Like, my king is kind of in bad territory. I have to go here, and then he takes my bishop. So I didn't fall for that. I just played g3. He brought his king, and here was like a important moment. I made a move which is a bit risky. I played the move e5 because I wanted to advance the pawns, but I was also wary that he was going to sort of like do some stuff with his. So I played e5. Idea being, if he takes, I take, attacking his rook, and now I have the constant idea of sort of entering with my rook. And I can start to bring the king in, slowly advance the pawns. Although it probably wouldn't have been so bad for him. If he goes, oops, not there. If he goes rook d8 to defend the pawn, then what was I going to do here? I believe I just wanted to drop back. I'm trying to remember where. I think I just wanted to go here, actually, because he still can't take. He's in a pin. And if he defends his pawn again, well, then I can take, and then take this guy. And then now I have 3 basically pass pawns that don't have anything in their way. So he played the move d5, shutting things down, but now he's giving up the c5 square. And I played b4, and I brought my king in, and then I blockaded him with this bishop move. And I was pretty happy with things here, although maybe I should have, instead of king f2, just played b6 and just exchanged here and gotten basically 2 connected pass pawns. Like, maybe black can still hold this, but I think that would have been the better way to go. I kind of delayed and tried to play things a little bit slower and more controlled, and it basically ended up working, because in this point, this was also a kind of an interesting moment, h4, because he could have played g4, and then the position would have probably ended up completely closed like this, and I would have been just trying to slowly grind him out on the queen side, but maybe he would be able to hold a draw. Instead, he took, allowing the g file to open, but I was the first to get there. And in this moment, he started to think. And what I was thinking is that, okay, if you put the rook on c8, he's going to go rook g8, and I'm going to go... Actually, I was cool with trading the rooks if he played that, because what I was thinking is I'm going to just bring my king in, and he's in trouble, because I'm going to put my bishop here, I'm going to bring the king in, and start to advance these pawns. And I was pretty sure that was winning. Although, looking at it now, I don't know, maybe there was something else I could do. Actually, hold on, let me just take a look. In this position, you know what's crazy? Maybe I can take here. And because I have these 3 pass pawns, it's just winning. I think that's actually the best way to go. Which I actually did consider that idea in the game, but I would have had to make sure to play it here. Yeah, that's crazy. I guess this is just winning now, because I just go b6, then I go a6, and I'm pushing my pawns through. Rook no match for 3 pass pawns. But in this position, the funny thing is he was definitely feeling, under pressure a bit, not sure how to defend, and he played the move a5, which I was not anticipating at all. And in chess, when you're not anticipating your opponent's move, it's probably because it's either really good or really bad. And in this case, it's really bad for him, because this is just a straight blunder. And it took me like a few minutes to realize, because I saw it like pretty much right away that I can just take en passant, but I thought like there was some trick that he had to it. Like I was like, there's no way that it's this simple. Like I just take en passant and I just win a pawn. And like I was having some issues calculating it because I was like, no, this is so simple. And eventually I just took. And now he just gave away his 1 blockading pawn. And now I have 3 pass pawns on the queen side, and he's just dead lost. And he played rook c7 here, and I pushed my pawn a little bit. And basically, like, he's just at my mercy now. I'm just going to advance the pawn slowly, and there's nothing he can do. I even have control of the 1 open file. And, to make things faster, he basically just blundered here. Although it's already a very hard position. I don't know if there's, like, any hope. I mean, maybe to go here and like sack the rook, but obviously against these 2 pawns, like black realistically has no hope. But he played the move king e8. And what's the simplest way I can win here? Queen. Skewer. And just like that, I pick off the rook, and I'm just up a bishop, and now he just threw the kitchen sink at me, basically, just like completely gave up all his pieces. I traded off the rook, and he played everything here out till the end, just maybe hoping that I was going to stalemate him. I mean, he's a young kid. He's probably got taught to play till mate, and, if he wants to do that, fine. I basically just, advanced the pawns, made a queen, and converted. And, yeah, I mean, definitely not a clean win by any means, but a win nonetheless. Overall, I played better than him in the endgame, even though, according to Engine, I was worse throughout most of it. But, I put him under some pressure, and eventually he made a decisive mistake. So, got the win in round 6. Now we head into round 7. So here we go, round 7. Man, this was a tough one. My opponent here is actually a kid originally from Azerbaijan, I believe. Although I think he's been living in the U.S. Recently. He's like right under 2100 USCF. Actually, I forgot again to include my last opponent's rating. My earlier opponent was like 2050 or so. So this guy is a bit stronger. Knew it was going to be a tough game. I was playing black, so let me flip the board. And kind of similar in a way to the evening game from yesterday, because it's the same opening and the same variation, like crazy, because in Blitz, I barely faced this, but 2 out of 2 classical games have been in this line. I play f5, and this time I made sure to review so that I would not mess up my prep, and here he played a different move than the opponent from yesterday. Opponent yesterday played e4, here he played g3. He thought for a while and played g3. Obviously, like, people aren't very familiar with this opening, so usually they spend some time like trying to figure out what they actually want to do. And I played g6, bishop g2, bishop g7, already have a good position, because basically, like, I kind of tricked him into moving his d-pawn twice, and I already have a nice center, and he still hasn't even put his pawn on e4, although he did it now, e4. And, I could take and trade things, but there's no rush. I also could have castled, and maybe I should have. But what I thought is that, okay, his plan is that if I castle, he's going to go knight f3. And if I take, he's going to go knight g5. And, like, maybe he can try to get on e6, or he can win the pawn back. I do have something in that I have the open f-file, but I wasn't so sure that I liked this. So another way I could have gone is to play a5. And let's say he puts the knight somewhere, knight f3 or knight e2, then play knight a6, put the knight on c5. Another sort of like strategy. I mean, it's pretty much like a King's Indian structure, so That's one plan that I have. But I kind of overthought things, and I immediately played knight a6 because I was thinking, okay, he's going to play knight f3. I play knight c5, and by the time he plays knight g5, I can just take, and basically we trade everything, and then I castle. I have the open f file. My bishop has the open diagonal, and I just have a better position here. Seems great. But what I missed, and this is just kind of just sloppiness on my part that I didn't see this, is that he can shut me down with b4. And obviously, it crossed my mind, but I thought, no, I take the pawn. Just a free pawn, right? Nope. Because here he would have the move queen a4 check, and he wins the knight. And I didn't see that until he played b4, and I was like, damn it, I put the knight on a6. I could have first played a5 so that he would never have b4 as an option, or at least, until many moves down the line when he preps it. But now my knight is just stuck on a6, and I castle, he plays a3, and now my knight just looks idiotic on a6. What is it doing? I mean, the one thing that it's doing is that if he ever plays b5, it can jump into c5. But for the time being, it's doing absolutely nothing. But even still, I thought my position is pretty good because he still hasn't castled, he still hasn't even developed his knight. He's spending all these moves, building on the queen side, but what about in the center and on the king side? So I decided here to take in the center, and I was hoping that he would take with the bishop, and then I play bishop f5, and if he defends with queen, then I'm going to start maybe even bringing my rooks to the f-file and trying to attack him. I thought, good plan. Only the problem is he doesn't have to take the pawn, because that pawn is not going anywhere, and he just played bishop e3. And he's developing his bishop, maybe hinting at playing c5. He can bring his knight in now, and this is where I really started to go wrong, I think. I'm not really sure what I should have done. Maybe I should have just brought out the bishop and tried to play queen c8 and tried to exchange off the light square bishops or something like that. I ended up playing b6 because I was a little bit annoyed about him playing c5, so I wanted to make sure I'm in position to defend against it. And then I was like, okay, I need to get this knight off of a6. I mean, it's just a joke here. So I played knight back to b8. He played knight e2, and I played knight d7. And I was hoping to bring it to f6, where it would at least be somewhat useful. I was thinking about something like this. And I realized here he can't even castle. Or, I mean, he can't. Let's put it this way. If he castles, he has to be careful, because if he were to take, at the end of the line, his h3 pawn hangs. So I was like, okay, I'm still doing well. But when we got to this point, I realized, okay, if I play knight f6 here, he might play bishop g5, and he's pinning me, threatening to take the pawn. If I go here, takes and takes, I wasn't sure that I liked this position, because he has the knight pretty well placed in the center. My bishop is kind of stuck behind the pawns on dark squares, and I can slide back, he'll just castle. Now, in hindsight, compared to what happened in the game, this position looks golden. I mean, I have the two bishops, no real problems. I mean, I can just play bishop f5, start to maybe do something on the f-file, maybe break with a5, just a perfectly normal position. But the problem that I suffer from, and many chess players are the same, is you reject a decent option in favor of something that is just worse. And you basically overthink and end up instead of just going with something simple, you try to overcomplicate and it backfires. And here I played the move h6 because I wanted to play knight f6 without allowing bishop g5. And I'm thinking, okay, if he takes, now I play knight f6. He can't pin me. He still can't castle because I'll take, and take. So he's going to have to probably defend with the queen, or I mean, he can take this way, but I'll just take back with my queen, and my position's pretty good. But as soon as I played h6, I realized that, wait a minute, I just irrevocably weakened my g6 pawn. And he thought for a while and played the move which I was anticipating. After realizing that I'd made a mistake, bishop takes e4. Because now my g6 pawn is just a massive target. And it's not easy to defend either, because if I play king h7, I'm putting myself in a pin. He can play like queen c2, and if I defend the pawn, first of all, I can't defend it by queen because he goes knight b5, and he attacks c7. Who's going to defend that? If I go with my rook, he plays h4, threatening to play h5 and exploit the pin. If I play h5, he plays bishop g5 and pins me. And I'm looking at all this thinking, like, what have I got myself into? So I didn't play king h7. I played the clumsy-looking rook f6, defending the pawn. He plays queen d2 now, looking to attack the h6 pawn. And again, I cannot play h5 because he plays here and pins me and wins the rook. So I played g5. I'm really playing with fire now. And he could have played h4 here, but I would have played g4 and closed things down. Instead, he played g4 himself, maybe preparing h4, and here is where I decided to make things interesting. I was obviously not too happy about my position, anticipating that I'm about to get attacked on the king side, so I went for an exchange sacrifice. Rook f4. Using my rook as a blockader and saying, go ahead and take me, you can give up your bishop, but you're going to open mine. And he actually did take. Although I think like if he literally had just, I don't know, even just long castled or something, I'm in a bit of an awkward spot. Because if I like bring my knight in, now he takes. And I think that white is just doing fine here. Because since he took right away, I was able to get the nice e5 square for my knight. And honestly, like I was feeling relatively okay here. Even though obviously I'm worse, but not by much. Because my bishop opened. I have a great central square for the knight. And it's not so easy for him to break through. And he has to be careful. I mean, I'm threatening to actually take on f3 and win the game. Like, for example, I mean, any like natural move he makes will avoid it. But let's say he even just plays let's say he plays h4, right? He's being overly aggressive. I go boom, and it's a fork, and he can't take me. So here he played knight e2, dodging. Also, the c4 pawn was under attack, another benefit of my move. And here I decided to play a5, trying to open things up for my rook to come out this way. And I was like, okay, if he plays b5, then he's giving up the c5 square. I can even reroute this way if I want to. Or just I was content with the fact that it's hard for him to break through now. So he simply castled, and we traded, and I played rook a3. And I'm thinking, if I get my rook to e3, like that's a pretty active square for the rook. That's pretty good. He played knight d4. And here, this is the phase of the game where there were some tactical opportunities that started to pop up. We were both getting pretty low on time. He was lower on the clock than me throughout most of the beginning, but then I dipped lower than him at some point. But here, let's just see. In this position, wrong score sheet, he had about 12 minutes or so, and I still had like 25 minutes. Yeah, about 20 minutes or so. I was getting a little bit lower, but I still had a time advantage. And the move that I first looked at here was knight d3, with a discovered attack on the knight. Point being that if he takes, I take with check, and then I go here and skewer him. The problem is, though, it doesn't work because he can move his knight to c6, attacking my queen, and now I have to move it, and then he takes the knight. So obviously it doesn't work. So I played rook e3, getting my rook to an active square, I felt like, and maybe hoping that something could go my way, maybe some tactic. He played knight c6 here, another tactical moment, because I thought this was a pretty good move. He's trying to trade off my knight. If I take, he also gets the d5 square. So I was thinking about taking and sacrificing my rook, getting to a position where I have two bishops against two rooks, and I was thinking, okay, his king is pretty exposed. Maybe I can take advantage of that. But realistically, you know, probably not, because I have one check. If he dodges it, I have to move my queen. Actually, in this case, I get this move in, so no. There was a different move I was looking at. Oh, actually, he can just force a queen trade. I hadn't even realized that, to be honest. So yeah, you see, it doesn't work. So I just simply moved my queen back. And now here, my opponent had less than 10 minutes, about 8 or 9. All he needed to really do was play king g2, kind of get his king to a safer position, and I'm definitely struggling. I might play bishop d7, try to get rid of this knight, but once he starts to trade things down and invades on the a file, it's going to be very hard for me to hold. However, he thought for a minute and played the move rook e1. And immediately, things started to go off in my head. Like, I was looking at different tactics involving the knight fork on f3, because he's only defending this pawn one time. And the first thing I saw was I take on f3. Bishop takes, knight takes, I'm forking queen and king. But the problem is, after I take his queen, he takes my queen. And then he takes my bishop. And I'm dead lost. So that doesn't work. Is there any other way I could try this? Wait a minute. I can play rook takes bishop, getting rid of the defender of the pawn. Now, if he takes my pawn, I just win the game on the spot with knight f3, winning a full queen. But he takes with rook, and my queen is pinned, and I can go check, right? And king g2, I take the queen, he takes my queen. It's the same thing, right? That's what I thought, and I said, okay, the whole sequence doesn't work. But in all of that, what did I miss? Did you catch the part where I missed something very simple? Well, it turns out this whole sequence involving rook takes e4 is correct, only here I need to make the simple realization that after knight takes f3 check, I can take the rook. So simple, but this wins the game basically, because now I have two bishops versus a rook with this lined up, and he's in big trouble here. I mean, I'm certain I would have won now, or, at the very least drawn. But in my mind, I just didn't even realize that after this check, I don't have to take the queen, I can take the rook. One little detail missed, and the rest of the game is just downhill after I missed this tactic. I mean, I brought my rook back to a3, where it's no longer in an active square. He played b5, which I don't think was very accurate, but he trades off the knights, and now he starts to squeeze me, basically. And did I play things well here? Absolutely not. But we're going to see over the next 20 moves or so is this bishop just being absolutely miserable on d7. Queen trying to figure itself out. I was constantly thinking about trying to go here and open things up, but I open things, and that also opens the h file for his rook. So, everything here is very double-edged. Played king f7, trying to get my king in. I was thinking about maybe playing queen h8 and bishop d4, something to maybe improve the position of the bishop. But I defended here for a bit, and we were both getting low on time. This is before time control. This is already move 30. And by this point, we both had 5 minutes. And here, he brought his bishop back and played h4. And he's trying to open the h-file to infiltrate. I brought my rook back in anticipation, takes, and he played queen d2. I was thinking queen h1 he was just going to play. And even that looks devastating, because he's threatening to come in here. How am I even, defending myself here? I mean, I have to run for the hills with the king, which is what I ended up doing. He played queen d2, and here goes the king. He's going for a run. He goes all the way to c8, and then all the way back, because there's no safe spot for the king. And he played queen b8 here. At this point, we had already made time control. This is move 43. So, I have time to think now, and so does he. And I understand that I am just dead lost here, because I had thought that I might be able to hold somehow, but then I realized that he has a simple plan of bringing the rook into h1 and then to h7. And his bishop supports it, and I'm busted. I don't really have a good defense here. So I went for one last desperate attempt and sacrificed my bishop on g4, thinking that if he takes, I go check, and he has to be careful where he puts his king. If he puts it on h1, let's say, I go queen f4, and I'm threatening mate. And probably he can still defend it, but Whoa, that's really weird. Where did the queen go? Okay, yeah. I'm threatening mate. He can defend against it technically by going like queen h8. But even simpler if he just plays king f1. And I'm like, this is just completely winning for white. I mean, I can play queen f4 and try to fish for stuff with my queen, but like, look at my king. I mean, it's ridiculous. But he, he started to really think here. And, when you're in a winning position, you don't want to allow your opponent some opportunity to like swindle you in some crazy way. So it's better to keep things simple. He decided to take the pawn. I brought my bishop back, blocking the check. And now he sacrificed his rook for the bishop, took my last pawn, and played bishop e4. And in this position, I actually just resigned because I'm down 2 pawns, but I just have no play. Like, I'm so beat. I was just so, like, drained by this point. Realized I just have nothing really felt like to play for. Engine says that this position is actually not that terrible. Like, he probably still would have had some work to do, to be honest. And the crazy thing is, I thought I cannot block here with the queen. Because if he trades things off, it's just a dead lost endgame for me. But the engine is saying that I have chances to hold this. Like, crazy as it is, I'm down 2 pawns here, same colored bishops, meaning I cannot allow them to be traded. But I guess it thinks that, I can, like, blockade him here. Like, I saw this, and I felt like there's no way I can hold this. I mean, he's just going to bring his king around somehow, and I lose, right? Well, maybe I should have at least tried it, because, what's the worst thing that could have happened? But, I was already so exhausted by this point that I just resigned here. Yeah, and then I recently, before recording this video, realized that I missed that tactic, so, yeah, pretty disappointed with myself, like, kind of a similar game, honestly, to the last game from last night, in that played with black, like, played at a line, which should have given me good chances, and this time, I actually got my prep right, so I had what, the foundations of a good position, but overthought, messed things up, and, things went in the wrong direction for me. So, yeah, that's it for round 7. I'm on 3.5 out of 7 games so far, 50%. Definitely not great. I'm going to be looking to just try to finish strong. Honestly, I haven't been very happy with my performances in this tournament. Haven't really been playing very convincing chess. Haven't been calculating well. My technique has not been very convincing either. So my goal is just to play 2 solid games to finish things off, because honestly, not a single game since the first round have I been like content with. Like, that was one game where, I defended well and then converted, but every game after that has just been a mess, and I've been missing things and I've been blundering. So yeah, just not going great, but all I can hope for now and all I can try to do is play well in the last 2 games. So I will be back for the final recap tomorrow. Thanks for watching.